the MG ZS EV. This is actually an owner's review, long term, 6 months. So if you're thinking about buying it, what's good and honest to goodness, what is genuinely bad? At $44,500 drive away, I'm gonna give you my honest to goodness review on this car. Is it worth your dough? That and a lot more. In Australia's cheapest EV, you could, for the same amount of money, buy this or buy the MX CX-5. It's amazing how similar they look with that grille, profile, size, everything. But my one, if I was to fill up with electricity from the grid with no solar, nothing whatsoever, is at least a third cheaper to run compared to that. And maintenance wise, sure, you're supposed to check in every year, but realistically, if you actually look at the logbook, no spark plugs, no oil, nada, nothing. So I guarantee you, long term, this car is going to be a lot cheaper to run, maintain, and own. I'll be getting to charging later on in the video, but the MG logo here hides where you're going to plug in and charge your car, which if you've got bad knees or a bad back, getting down here is a right real pain in the ass. But you know the other issue here is, there's no alarm to say that I've left this open. And I have driven a few times unknowingly having this open to the wind and the elements. It's kind of frustrating, and you'd think from the front there where your driving position is, you should be able to see it, but no. It's definitely one of my first issues with this car. This car is kind of deceptive in that it looks relatively big, but it's actually quite narrow. It's tall, but it's narrow. Lengthwise, it's about 4.5 meters long with wheelbase 2.5 meters. And inside, you've got a nice flat floor. So space is absolutely awesome. The look of the car I think is great. The side profile, very becoming. The chrome, a little bit old fashioned, and I did try deleting it, but unfortunately, it didn't actually stick long enough, so I had to come off. And come around to the rear now, got good looking rear 3/4 and boot. And speaking of which, let's take a look inside. Boot space is a reasonable 448 litres. This parcel shelf and false floor can be removed to increase that substantially, plus you can also put the seats forwards. And under here, yep, okay, there is no spare tyre, but it does have a run flat repair kit sort of thing, plus also a nice little organiser for your cables, which I actually quite like. Space in the back's pretty good. This is kind of in the same position as where I sit, and as you can see, heaps of legroom here, lots of footwell space there. As I said earlier, there's pretty much a flat floor back here. You've got one USB charging slot and, well, no vents. But the real feature of this car is that roof. And it's like a moon roof, a sun roof. It's a roof on steroids. And it's basically all glass. And if you want the best seat in this car, it's actually back here, where you get to look up at the sky and just marvel at its beauty. At night, my kids love it back here, and I can understand why. It really is that good. But being entire glass, people are thinking, is it hot, Chris? What do you do about that? Well, you can actually put this automated sunroof forward and backwards. Either you can stop at any point along the journey, you can also open the sunroof fully, or just tilt it, whatever you need. Let's talk about ergonomics and seat and stuff like that. This seat is electric and it's four-way adjustable, and it's a pain in the ass because there's no memory. The other side is a purely manual affair. It's pretty supportive and you can find any position that you actually pretty much need. Steering wheel feels good too. That leather wrapped steering is great. It is tilt adjustable, so up and downsies, but no in and out. No, it doesn't telescope, and that is super frustrating if you're also a person who maybe has either short or long legs and wants the steering wheel in a certain position relative to them. Everything feels nice and centered. Display is very clear. You've got analog and analog speed, a digital readout, which I'll get to in a moment, and the amount of power or efficiency of which you're driving. The overall interior of the MG ZSE is actually pretty nice. A lot of the materials are the same you'll find on VW and Audi. This vent, Audi, this stalk, VW, you get the idea. You got the usual array of controls for your computer, voice assistant, as long as your phone's connected, that is. There's no actual smart, speak thing here. I'll get to that later on. Horn in the center, obviously, airbag, and volume up and down, next track, mute, shortcut to your phone, and source. And that source button is ridiculous. You can set to it, hey, when I press this button, go to my favorite input, or press this button, change your input source. But it doesn't work properly. It doesn't actually jump to what you've told it that I want you to jump to this source. No, it's extremely frustrating, and realistically, I just let Android Auto do all the heavy lifting in this car in terms of actual music, listening to podcasts, navigation, and so forth. But nonetheless, that screen there does have maps if you want to use them. Whilst it's up and running, they're quite reasonable, they're good quality, you can see them. Navigation is fine, but you're better off seriously just using like Apple Maps if you used an iPhone with Apple CarPlay, or use Android Auto for that function. In a modern car, there's the usual array of electric power windows, electric mirrors, manual affair with the rear view mirror, automatic headlights, automatic wipers, and a HVAC system that is extremely frustrating. The HVAC system looks rather modern with push buttons and dials, but it actually is pretty primitive. The heat and cool control is literally that. It's not climate control. You can't set a temperature. And one of my frustrations here, and I'm going to sound petty, but it is legitimately an issue, is you want to turn the temperature down? Watch this. Okay, you're getting cold, you want to increase the temperature? You guys do a bazillion increases to get that temperature back up to full. It would be great if they could address this in software, because I guarantee you this is software related. Turning that knob is a software thing, and they could easily fix this, hopefully with a future update. But unlike Teslas and more expensive cars, this thing is not connected. You don't get constant over-the-air updates. You have to go back to MG once per year, or they say once per year, to get any software fixes that need to happen to this car. And I'll put on the screen now what version we're running here, but essentially I've had it for 6 months and I haven't had a software update, but it's nothing fancy like Tesla is. One of my other bugbears with this car, but I've learned to get around it, is the controls as to where the air's distributed in the car. What do you think this button does? You've got a little person sitting down and it's got an arrow pointing upwards. Do you think if I press it, it's going to get the air off my face where it is right now and onto the windscreen? Watch what happens. It just went downwards. So now it's on my face and my feet. Let's press that up button again. Oh look, it's gone down to my feet. I think there's some reverse programming logic going on here. So now that I know it was on my feet, I pressed the exact opposite button, the one that says downwards, to get it going back upwards, and vice versa. It was very annoying at first, and first world problem, I know, but you would expect they would get fundamentals such as this right, wouldn't you? Okay, that out of the way, I do like though, the seat warmers. Press those little suckers and they're on. And well, that's it, they're on. they don't have like 1, 2, or 3, they're on or they're off. And they do warm you up very nicely, thank you very much. The car stereo in this thing is okay. The speaker quality is okay, but realistically, the speed of the unit is terrible. It's slow. If you've ever had a reasonably good stereo head unit, this thing's going to frustrate you. You press the screen and it may or may not actually respond to what you've asked it to do. It's super slow, underpowered, and not really warranted, or it should not be in this level of car. For $44,000, they should have cranked out another $500 for a way better head unit, because in Pan Asia, there's actually a lot better version than this thing that is faster, integrated with apps, has things like your weather, has voice commands, and you can see your battery percentage and a lot more. This is terrible. It really is. And I'm actively trying to find out how I can change it out and get something better. And as soon as I do, I will be sure to let you guys know, and I'll do a review on it. Coming to the last section of controls of the car, you've got your mode, which is basically economy, normal, and sport. Whatever you set it in last time, it doesn't matter. It's going to put it back in normal each and every time you get into the car. Next button over is KERS, a bit of a Formula 1 reference there for the amount of regenerative braking you get. You've either got level 1, level 2, or level 3. Just press forward and backwards and toggle that little sucker through. Coming over to the far right, and this battery button is the most useless button in the whole damn car. You press it and it tells you, not much. It tells you how much range you got left. Not the state of charge, nothing around maybe consumption and stuff like that. Oh no, you gotta do it over here on the steering wheel. It's ridiculous and ill thought out. And MG, if you're watching this video, please can you address this button? I've spoken about before in other videos. You need to just program it so that you get a quick glance of what the state of charge is for your battery, what the percentage is, how your performance is going in regards to, kilowatt hours per 100 Ks, things like that. Stuff that people genuinely need. Just telling you how much range you have left when you've already actually got it on your primary display anyway is useless. Okay, I think we should get to driving in a moment, and to do that, you put your foot on the brake, you either put it into drive and you're going to be going forwards, flick it the other direction and it goes into reverse, and the reverse camera comes up, and to put it into park, you just press the button down. It's actually very intuitive, great to use. You don't even have to look at nothing, your hand just falls in it and it's great to use. The instrument cluster is pretty easy to use. You've got the old analog, you've got the digital in the middle, and as long as you haven't got MG Pilot on, the digital readout stays in the center there, and I can quite clearly see right now I'm doing 15 k's per hour. Great! But as soon as I get to 60 k's per hour, that disappears on me, and it's crazy frustrating. It's got this stupid graphic telling me that, hey, I'm going to keep it in the center of the lane, which, by the way, it does very, very well. And you can't see very well what you set your actual top speed at, and you have to turn things on and off, and that is another frustration which I wish they could address, again, in software. The MG ZS EV has got reasonably good power and efficiency. Since getting the car from day zero, the second odometer, I have never actually reset it. So after more than 6,000, almost 7,000 kilometers, I'm averaging 17.7 kilowatt hours per 100 Ks. For people who drive Tesla Models 3s, Ys, whatever you drive, know that that actually includes running the HVAC and all the other systems that this car may use. So when you hear figures of, oh, my car does 230 kilometers, this car really does, at highway speed, freeway speed, 230 kilometers. They do actually have a WLTP rated cycle at 265 kilometers, but realistically, unless you're happy not having the aircon or heater on, or seat warmers, or running accessories inside the car like charging your phone, you're not going to get that range. For me, my experience has been pretty good. I only drive 20 to 30 kilometers per day, so I never have to actually think too much about it whatsoever. Every night I go home, I plug in, charge up, and it's ready the next day. Great. But there was this one time when I went out and shot in Ballarat my first impressions of the DJI Air 2S, and I could have charged in Ballarat. I could have charged on the way home at several places, but I chose not to because I knew that the car actually had the range available to it. But then, within about 5 kilometers of home, it had 16 kilometers left on the odometer in terms of estimated range remaining, and then suddenly it went to double dashes. That is to say, it didn't have any clue as to how much further this car was going to go. It had already warned me that the battery was low to plug it in, but it didn't cripple the car in any way, it didn't slow it down, it didn't attenuate acceleration. It just gave me the most anxious experience I've ever had in this car, and that's just the one time. But in general, that 44.5 kilowatt hour battery, 42-ish that's usable, genuinely gives you 230 kilometers of real range. Of all the EVs I've driven, this one is the worst when it comes to suspension setup. It needs to be firmer. If I go over a bump, it will bounce up and down for a little bit. And yeah, it's very unsettling and doesn't give you any confidence whatsoever in its abilities around corners, say. Wind noise is actually pretty good. They've done a great job of dampening it and putting extra padding in places, and you can only hear something from around the window area and the tyres. Before I get back on the highway, probably a good opportunity to me to talk to you about MG Pilot Assist. It's great in that it follows the car in front, stays in the lane very nicely, and the markings on the road are great. Anything about 60 km per hour, and it will turn the wheel for you, and you just barely need to keep a hand on it to say, hey, I'm actually here and I'm paying attention. But there's two issues here that I need to talk about. First up, when the Pilot is on and it's got the radar cruise control, that is to say it'll match the car in front speed up to whatever you set it to, when it slows the car down, instead of regenerating the energy back into the battery, it actually uses the brakes. This screen is basically in the bottom right hand corner telling you how much amperage it's using to power the car to move it forwards. As I accelerate, amperage goes up. If I regen, it goes into negative territory. But check what happens when I've got Pilot on. The car's now slowing down to match the car in front, and it's actually slowing the car using brakes. And that's a complete waste and really disappointing on MG. The next issue is that with City Assist, that is to say stop-start traffic, it actually uses the emergency brakes to slow the car and stop the car. It sounds terrible, sounds like you're braking it, it's not very subtle or smooth whatsoever, and I've been in way cheaper cars that do this way better. I've found that I don't use it anymore because it is just so bad, and I really hope that they can address it in the next software update. But at the moment, yeah, they say it can do this, but it really can't. All right, let's go into charging this car. If you need to rapid charge the MG ZS EV, you can do so up to 75 kilowatts. 0-80% would only take you 35 minutes. But you shouldn't really do that unless you really need to, like on a road trip. Better to actually go home. So let's go there. Charging your EV is best done slow and steady, and come bundled with the car was a 10 and 15 amp charger. So per hour it's going to give you about 10 or 15 kilometers of additional range per hour. On board there's only a 6.6 kilowatt charger, so realistically going for a 3-phase power supply is going to be a waste because you won't be able to max it out anything beyond, I believe, about 22 kilowatts. Might be wrong about that, I'll put on the screen now if I am. A big, huge omission that MG has done here though is not allowing you to set in the car the maximum charge that you're going to allow the car. You can leave this plugged in and charging, and it's going to go to 100% unless you intervene. Big mistake. Huge mistake, and for a lithium-ion battery, this is not good. The other issue I have is that they don't actually allow you to set the timer when you want to start and stop the charge. Again, Nissan Leafs have this, other cars have this, and they should too. And I believe that, well, I hope rather, MG is going to address this in a future software update, but right now, yeah, that's one of the big, huge issues I have with this car. So there you have it, my long-term review of the MG ZS EV. My takeaway is this: at the end of the day, it's just a car. And I get it's electric and that is exciting to some people. It's got a big battery, it's got electric motors, and when you put your foot down, that instant acceleration and the torque, even though realistically not that fast compared to other cars, it It still excites, yes, but it gets me from A to B, and it does what I needed to do, and it does it really well. The issues I have around the battery management, charging, the stereo head unit, and the display with the speedo and stuff are realistically the big three issues I have with this car. All three of them could be addressed in software updates because it is electric, and I really do hope that MG address it. If I was to recommend this car to somebody right now, I would say to them, hey look, if that's your budget, definitely you can't go wrong with this thing. It's cheap to run, it's okay to drive, and for what you need in general purposes, it will get 5 people around, well 3 kids and 2 adults quite comfortably. But if you actually want a better charging experience, more data and control, and have a car that's always been updated, you need to stretch for a Tesla. Right now, that is still the king of electric vehicles in Australia. And until we see prices come down significantly in the space, it's kind of like, well, are you happy pulling out another $20,000 for an electric vehicle that's going to give you all those different fun things that Teslas do? This, I'm not disappointed, and I don't want you to take that away from this review. No, by all means, I'm very happy that I've made the transition to electric, and each day I get out and I like to drive it. But yeah, there's just those 3 main points that I think people should be wary of. So, did you enjoy the video? Leave me a comment. Ask me questions. I do actually look at them. If you haven't already, consider subscribing. I put out content 3 times a week or so. And if you want to support the channel on the next level, consider joining me over here on Patreon, where you get early access to news, polls, behind the scenes, and stuff that you just don't get here. And as per usual, you be good and you be green.